Welcome to another episode of Unstoppable. We have Matt Wilkow in the studio, Center for Wealth Preservation. Matt's an old friend, good buddy, love the guy. Matt, welcome.
Thank you. I got to say, Robbie, this is incredible. And, it's amazing because I was here, a year ago when you were building this studio. And it's you by yourself with a little drill gun. And you're talking about how amazing this is going to be, and I believed you, but I couldn't envision it. And now to be here to see the finished product is amazing. You've done a phenomenal job.
We appreciate it very much, man. We appreciate it very much. We love having you here. You've been up to some amazing things over the last year. You kind of, the reason why I have you here is kind of, I wanted to talk about a few things. One is you're like when I think about like the typical professional salesperson, the person that comes to mind is you. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. That's like the honest opinion. You're like the man. Like you've always been so professional. You're the guy that follows up. You're the guy you could rely on. How'd you get into the sales business when you started, and how'd you get so good at it, and how did it come so natural?
So I think the best way for me to answer that question is probably for me to just kind of give you a quick recap of my story and kind of what led me up to this point. And I'll try to make it brief because, when I talk about myself, I can keep going for a long time.
I want to hear it all.
So, I never, I was the kid in high school where, I got good grades and, I like to have a lot of fun. Work hard, play hard was definitely my mentality. But if you had asked me at 16, 17, what are you going to do when you grow up, Matt? No idea. I mean, I never had a clue. I didn't have an idea going into college what I was going to major in. I just wasn't that guy that, since I was a little boy, I dreamed of, doing this. I didn't know. I knew I wanted to do something. I knew career was important to me. I knew I wanted to be successful. I knew that I wanted to do something that had a large impact on the world, right? Helping people and just trying to actually, leave a mark, do something meaningful.
And I think not knowing is probably way more common than people actually knowing. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're just I guess, comfortable enough to admit it.
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean, that's probably way more common anyway.
For sure. And there's a lot of people, too, that, they spend their whole childhood imagining what they're going to be, and then they get there, and it's not what they think it's going to be, and then they do a career change, right? So, for me, though, like, I just didn't really know. So I started going, I got into college. I started taking classes, and I said, let me take some business classes. I think I like business. I don't really know. I think I would be good at it. I don't really know. And I ended up really enjoying it, really doing well at it, enjoying it enough that, I was buying books at 19, 20 years old. I was buying books on my own, reading them. And I'm like, this may be, and obviously business is, can't be more general. I mean, there's a million different directions you can go with business. So I didn't really necessarily understand my path at that time, but I knew I wanted to at least focus in on this. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be an astronaut or a scientist or anything like that. Something in that business world, in that entrepreneurship world, just kind of caught my eye. And so then that led to the next step, which had me taking financial and economic classes. And I just happened to, again, really enjoy it. It came very naturally to me. And I've always thought that I was somebody that was a good communicator, that I was able to connect with people. And, so I try to think, like, is there anything out there I can do that can kind of create a bridge between those two things that I like to do and that I think I'm okay at, which is, communicating and being around people, and then business, financial, blah, blah, blah over here. And the idea of working in the financial services industry kind of came to fruition there, and said that might be the perfect career path for me to take that can create that bridge between those two pillars of what I like to do. Mm-hmm. So that's where the idea was born, I guess you can say, if that makes sense.
Totally.
The path then from there took a million different angles. So, I worked as an intern underneath a financial professional in the industry. I enjoyed working with him. He really liked me. He thought I would do very well in that industry and be able to help a lot of people. And so, when I got out of school, I started working more closely with him. And, what I didn't realize when I was in my early mid-20s is how much of an entrepreneurial path it is to work in that industry.
Yeah, it's not an easy business.
It's not an easy business, and being an entrepreneur, period, is not easy. I mean, I don't know, you tell me, Robbie, I don't know any business out there that it's like, oh yeah, you just start the business, it's easy, you make money right away, there's never any problems, and 90% of people that do it are successful.
I don't know any business that's easy. If anybody does know a business that's easy and you have absolutely no problems, please come on the podcast. I want to know all about it. I'm going to pick your brain because that's the business I want to be in.
Yeah.
Because that's just not the way it goes.
For sure. I mean, being an entrepreneur, it's difficult. And that's why most people don't do it. And I think even our culture has kind of almost taken steps back from it. I think, I know for me, my parents weren't entrepreneurs, and they're phenomenal people. I love them to death. But the mentality definitely was, you work hard, you get a good job, and, you put your time in at the good job, and that's it. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't these ideas of starting a business, controlling your own destiny, et cetera, et cetera. So when I was, just a young man, and even though I enjoyed the industry, I felt I would be good at it. I was even getting some traction going. The idea of just being a business owner and the blood, sweat, and tears and the time that it takes to really get that going was intimidating to me. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm not gonna lie. I was like, man, I don't know if I can do that, and I don't know, I don't even know where to begin. And so against the advice of some people, honestly, that worked in that industry, I started to look into other avenues. And so I started to look into sales, right? I kind of felt like I had an ability to do that kind of work.
I actually did not know you started in financial services first. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had experience in the industry. I mean, it was very light. I was very young.
But still, it's kind of crazy to know early that might be a path you want to take.
Oh yeah.
Start down that path. Then realize maybe this isn't perfect for me.
Yeah.
You flip the script a little bit. You go down another path. You start doing sales, which we'll get into, and then you come back to that world. Yep. What, 5, 6, 7, 10 years later? I mean,
10 years.
10 years later.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So just to continue on with the story, and obviously it can be a long story. To make it short. I go into sales and I start doing well right away. And when you do well in sales at a sales culture or sales organization kind of environment, I mean, and you start becoming one of the top salespeople very quickly. I mean, talk about an ego trip. I mean, you're all of a sudden you're the king of the office. The bosses that have worked there for years are like throwing rose petals out in front of you as you walk in because, they think they found, the diamond in the rough. They got their next great all-star sales guy and what this can do for the business. So as a young man, when I was looking over here and saying, okay, I like this, I'm good at it, but it's going to take years to build. I'm scared as all hell of doing it. And then I start doing this and it's like instant success and everyone's, kind of like, kissing my butt for lack of a better word, and I can do whatever I want, and I'm being told I can write my own ticket at these organizations. I kind of just I got swept up in the glamour, and I started going in that direction.
So let's talk about it for 2 seconds, right? Like, sales is a weird world. A lot of people, what? Sometimes sales has a a bad condemnation with it, right? Like sometimes people feel like, sales is kind of, you think of that typical used car salesman, you think of, and people kind of,
very selfish. You're just trying to, it doesn't matter what's good for the consumer. I'm just trying to make $1.
100%. That's the mentality or the persona that comes with being a quote unquote salesman. And I think that and I do know some that are just, in your caliber, like up in your league, the professionals. And to be a really true sales professional, it takes someone special, right? It takes someone to understand that you're not out for yourself. You are there for the needs of your customers, and to really be successful with it and make it sustainable is a much different approach than I'm going to sell anything that walks in front of me and kind of talk to anybody to do it for me. How'd you have that success early on? Like, how did you know that? Did that come naturally to you just because you're a genuine guy. I mean, you are. So is that how it worked, or how did you kind of have that success just out of the gate?
It's a phenomenal question, and I'm going to give you an honest answer, Robbie. And the honest answer necessarily doesn't, you know, I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I am glad of the outcome that came out of it. Because when I was, you know, young and I'm being told, you know, just, you know, sell, you know, I didn't have the right mentality at that moment in my life. It was really about, you know, I don't care if there's a square object and it's a round hole. I'm going to try to figure out a way to get it in there. And I just, you know, I was just good at it. And I was also, I mean, there was, you know, work ethic goes hand in hand with it, right? It doesn't matter how good you are at something. If you're not going to put the time into it, it's not gonna work out. So I mean, when you have, you know, talent and work ethic put together, things usually go well. But I was just immature, to be honest, and I didn't have the right mentality. And a few years into that business, I realized, despite the success, despite, you know, everybody, you know, saying how incredible I was at that organization, I'm gonna be famous there and I'm gonna make all this money, I wasn't really happy. And I realized, I got a little older, and I realized that, you know, I wasn't looking, you know, that there are two ways that you can go about sales. There's the way that, you know, that I think a lot of people perceive it, which is kind of what I was doing as a young man. And then there's this other way. There's this way that you can have, you know, rise above, be a higher caliber, and do right by people, right? It's a perception change. Instead of you looking at, you know, this meeting and what can I get out of it, you're trying to figure out, well, what can I do for this client? And sometimes the answer is my solutions or whatever I have in my tool bag may not be a good fit for this client. And then, you know what you do? You try to refer them to a friend who can help them, right? And I grew up a little bit and I realized that it's not about the short-term gain anymore. It's about helping people. It's about trying to figure out what is the right fit for them, irregardless of how it impacts me. And then I started to build up a network of other professionals so that when a client comes my way that maybe isn't a right fit, I can point them in the right direction. And then because I do the right thing, they point it back to me, and you get more referrals that way. And it's a slower kind of way to build up the business, but it's what's gonna provide much more success. It's gonna, most importantly, do the right thing by the client. And as I started to have that paradigm shift in the way that I looked at business, I started to get happier.
And it makes it sustainable.
Yeah.
And that's the most important part. Like, I think that a lot of people get caught up in the mix and want to just be out of the gate, and they want to be that, you know, 30-year-old billionaire, that, like, you know, prodigy, and they just try to make money any way they possibly can. And what happens is they get caught in this grind. They get caught in this weird, and they develop a reputation of not doing the right thing by people and just kind of being that quote-unquote used car salesman that just they'll sell you anything that they could possibly sell you and not necessarily provide a solution.
Yep.
And I think that the best salespeople, and I think this is what you learned along the way, is if you are a valuable resource to people, you could help them through whatever problem they have in hand, whether you're going to make money on it or not. That becomes very powerful. But more importantly, when you actually do sell someone something, you're selling them something that's a solution for a problem they have, and it's ultimately going to give them value. And then when you give them that value, and like, if you could really, really, truly be selfless in sales and provide people as much value as you possibly can, when you give them that value, they're going to talk about it.
Yep.
And then word of mouth comes in, and then whatever. But if you develop that reputation to be a valued resource, then the sky's the limit.
Yep.
But to be the guy that just sells anything, that's just not sustainable, and the sky is no longer the limit, because eventually your luck's going to run out.
And I realized it too. I mean, I had an experience. I can't remember exactly when, but I'm pretty sure I was buying a car. It actually might have been when I was purchasing my first home. And I was going over, it was either the realtor or the car broker. I can't remember the exact scenario, but I remember that they asked me a question of like, well, what is it that you want in this house? Or what is it that you want in this car? And I gave them a really meaningful answer. And like, I could just tell they weren't listening at all. And then they were like, all right, well, I think a perfect fit would be this. And they showed me this product that like completely contradicted what I just said. And I'm looking at this person like, you, from the very beginning, had it in your mind that you were going to try to sell me this car or sell me this house, and you just asked me that question to make me try to feel good, like, as if you were listening, but you really weren't.
And it's
right?
and you see right through it.
Yeah.
You see right through it, and you know, and that I mean, and now you're left with a bad experience, right? Because ultimately it's experience. You're left with this bad experience, and that's what you're going to pass along. You're never going to refer anyone to that person ever.
Nope.
No one's ever going to say, oh, go see this guy who made me feel like shit about, the car I was buying, and they didn't listen to a word I said. It's not going to happen. So even if they got that sale, right? Even by luck, you said, you know what? I don't like them, but they do have the product I need.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna buy it.
Convenience almost.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable.
You're never going to go back to them. And so, I realized probably, a few years into my first sales career job that I grew up really fast, and I did that paradigm shift. And I was actually worried, because still I was young. I didn't know a lot about business. I think I was like 25, 26 at the time. I'm 33 today. So, we're talking about years ago. And I was kind of concerned. I was like, look, I'm going to do this because it's the right thing to do. I'm growing up. I realized that. And I was prepared to make less money. Because in my mind at the time, I thought, like, look, I know this other way works really well. I'm going to do it this way because it's better for everybody. But, I'm prepared to make less money, and that's okay. And, what happened was what we were just talking about. The exact opposite happened, where I actually, it kind of launched me into the next level of success. And then that launched me to another career opportunity to work in corporate IT and telecom sales, which was a big risk, right? I was established in my old company. When I told them I was leaving, they're telling me, you're making a mistake. You write your own ticket at this company. What are you doing? Da-da-da-da. So I go to this new company, and I had to start over, new industry, and, but with the right mentality, having those, a few years of wisdom now under my belt. And, it took time to build, but then it just launched me into a whole nother level.
And, it's cool. It's sometimes, people, you got to go against the grain, right? People are telling you it's not right for you. It's not right for you. You're crazy. Why would you do that? And as a younger guy, you probably take that, you take that to heart.
Yeah.
Like, you're really like, am I making the right decision? But ultimately, you went with your gut. You bet on yourself. And it worked out really well because I know the next chapter, right? So you got into a new corporate America. You started doing sales there. Mm-hmm. You did very, very well, right? So you took that leap of faith, and it worked out tremendously for you. Mm-hmm. And then again, right? Well, we're going to fast forward a little bit, right? You are now faced with this over the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. Like, how long have you been doing this now? Like a year?
January.
Yeah,
really
COVID kind of screwed time up, right? But now you're faced with another point in your career where you're going to take another huge leap of faith, arguably even more of a leap of faith,
much more
than you did the first time, because you're going to completely transition, and you're no longer just a salesperson and trying to go out and sell XYZ product. Now you're going to sell a service, but a very important service, a very something that you have to be really responsible with. And now you totally change career paths and get into the financial services world.
So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. That is a huge transition. Something that people are faced with a lot, especially right now. I think this couldn't be a better time to talk about it, because a lot of people are faced with this uncertainty. They're faced with like these weird moments in their life where, what's the next step? Do I keep going down a path that I know in my heart is not the best for me? Or do I totally flip the script and change careers and go down a different path that is, quite frankly, terrifying? But you did it, right? And I've been talking to you over the last couple of months. I know that it's been really going well. I don't think you're looking back. I think that your future is bright. But how'd you grow the balls, quite frankly, to make that switch? And how do you come to that realization that this was the best thing for you?
So, and I like to, mention how I had some experience, as a young man in that world. And, so because I had that experience throughout my time at my first, career sales job, and then my second, it was always in the back of my mind, like, oh yeah, I could go back to that. And I kind of know what the deal is. And, we both do a lot of networking. You meet a lot of people in the financial service industry while you're out there networking. So I met a lot of people, and I stayed in close contact. I have a family member that works in the industry. And so it was always like there. But it was hard to walk away because I was happy, I was doing well. And so it's like, do I really want to start all over and do this and go down this entrepreneurial path? And it wasn't really attractive to me for a long time until something started changing in my life, and I started to just, and it probably was about the time where, I got married, I bought a house, I had a daughter, and just like how I grew up in those first few years, like I mentioned before, I kind of took another maturity leap that I think we all go through at some point, to say, I'm not looking at things in terms of the short term anymore. I'm not looking at it as like, all right, am I going to have a good year or am I going to have a bad year? I'm looking at things in terms of, well, what is the rest of my career, right? I'm 33. Am I going to be doing this in 20 years when I'm 53? Am I going to retire from this industry at 63? What is the plan here? And, just, a bunch of other things that it's too much to talk about to get into, but I started to realize that maybe taking that entrepreneurial path is a better fit for me, just me as a person, right? And that's not the case for everybody, and that's okay, right? I think a lot of people, it's not the best fit for, and that's fine. But I started to realize that it is the path for me, and I started to get a lot of confidence that it is. And since I knew about the industry and I loved the industry, and then I had matured into a place where I was now ready to actually go back into it and do it really the right way now, it started to make sense to me. Now, that being said, it's not easy to walk away from a very high earning, corporate position that you're in, that you've built into, to start over, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. And it took about a year of me, countless meetings with people in the industry, trying to find out, like, okay, well, where would I go? Who would I partner with? How would this look? So I got to figure that out. I mean, my wife, she would be laughing if she was here, because I don't think there was a night that went by that year that somehow it didn't get brought up of like, well, what do you think? Should I do this? Should I not do it? And eventually, after almost a year of research and just constantly looking into things, the stars started to align, where I met the right people at the right organization that I could partner with. It just all started to come together, and I started to have this overwhelming faith that, like, yeah, this is the right path, and it's going to be hard. I don't know how exactly it's going to go about, how long it's going to take, but I feel like from a long-term perspective, this is the way that I should go. And you know what? If I don't do it, every year that goes by, it's going to become harder. And I definitely don't want 10 years from now to be like, all right, because I don't regret leaving the industry 10 years ago.
Yep.
The last 10 years of doing what I did, I think was perfect for me, because it got me to a place where I can go back into this industry with the right mindset and the right maturity. But I could see myself stalling on it, and then another 10 years go by, totally. and then regretting it in 10 years that I didn't do it at this age. And I said, I don't want that to happen. You know what? Sometimes you just gotta have some blind faith and go for it.
Totally. And like you literally, even if it was against the odds, even if people thought it was a bad move, even if like you really didn't have it all figured out, you just kind of dove in and went for it. And it's funny, you talk about thinking towards the end of your career. The word regret came up, and a lot of times when I'm making decisions like this, I sit back and I think about, like, I'm a risk taker, right? Like, that's just me at heart. I'm totally a risk taker, sometimes to a fault. Like, sometimes I don't even feel comfortable if I'm not taking that risk. Like,
it's too safe.
Yeah, it's like, I just get like weird about it. Like, I don't want to just sit and be stagnant. So, but a lot of times when I'm making a big decision, I think to myself, am I going to look back in 50 years, 60 years, or whatever, 40 years now, right? And say, I completely regret not at least trying it. I completely regret not going for that. And sometimes that's scarier than actually going for something and failing, right? Yeah. Like, it's crazy. I follow a ton of people on this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I heard somebody say one time how, like, they learn more from talking to people, 70, 80, 90 years old about the things that they regret than you do talking about the guy who's 40 and said, everything went perfect. I did right. I did this. I did, because regret's a huge thing, right?
It is.
You don't want to look back and say, man, what if, or this could have been. And you kind of just rolled up your sleeves and you went for it. And so far, I know it's only been a short sample, but you've had, again, tremendous success where you are and where you're landing. It just seems to be going right and in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's definitely not something that happens quickly by any means. But all the right actions, I feel very confident that all the right actions are being taken at this time to build a very, very successful business. And I'm already seeing like, little bits of success here and there. But what's really more important and what really gets me more excited about the power of this business that, we're trying to build is, the signs that the success hasn't happened yet, but you get little glimpses to see, I think that's going to work out. And I think that's going to work out. And if I work really hard on this, who knows how long it's going to take, but I think this has potential. And you start seeing those things. And so you start gaining more confidence that, all right, I'm going down the right path. And I am very happy with the decision that I made. It's been a very rewarding experience, and it just feels better, when you have that entrepreneurial spirit and you're able to really let that spirit shine, it just feels great. The other big aspect of this,
before you go, I just want to say one thing, right? It's such a good lesson that you're talking about is these small, little, tiny things that that you kind of see through the trees that may pan out and be a success. And a lot of times I feel like people get caught in these things where they know it, and a lot of people around you don't see those. There's no one else that could see those small little things than you, right? Like, or maybe somebody that you're in the business and in the grind with, but nobody on the outside could ever see those little glimpses of hope and those little things. And you know it, you feel it, it's going to come down the line. And I think that happens to people a lot, like where they know they're onto something, great, and they have all this outside influence, all these people that don't see those tiny little small great things. They kind of might see that, whatever, oh, you haven't had the same paycheck that you had in the last 3 years, or you haven't had X, Y, and Z, or you couldn't afford the car you wanted, and then why are you doing this? What are you doing? And in your heart, it's because in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever it might be, it's going to come. You see it, you feel it, you touch it. And I think that people really need to follow themselves more, trust themselves, trust their judgment, and not worry about those outside influences. Because I could imagine there's a lot of people in your world, and maybe you live in the most supportive world I've ever seen. And there are people that support, right? And that's great. And I love those people. There's other people that think you're nuts, right?
Yeah,
that think you're absolutely crazy, and they don't see it. They don't see that light, So I think that the fact that you could follow your gut is great. And I think that a lot of people out there need to kind of learn how to do that and learn how to be confident in doing that and following those small little signs that can piece a puzzle together and no one else can see that, and just kind of follow that through and kind of see it out, because that's how it's built, right? It's built on block by block. So I think that's really cool that you're seeing it.
Yeah, and it's, Robbie, it's a perfect time to talk about it, because look at what's going on specifically now in 2020. Right? It's really easy for people to say, like, now is not the right time to be going against the grain, totally. Especially if you got a little cushy situation going on, hold out and wait.
And as much as not the right time, some people just, like, they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
So that's the whole other, at least you were kind of set with this, like, decision to be made. Yep. Other people, the decision's being made for them.
Yeah.
And it scares them to death, but, this is kind of a good sign or kind of like a sample of why maybe don't be so scared. Maybe kind of let it roll. Go after that dream that you've always had, and use this as an opportunity to say, F it. Like, I've been doing okay so far, but now this decision has been made for me, and I'm going to go after something that it's been in the back of my mind, like it was for you, for a really long time. And now you just kind of go all in on that dream, or all in on that idea, or all in on that business that you've been thinking about forever. So I think it's like the perfect time, because I think so many people are faced with that right now.
Yeah, agreed. And, I look at it in the opposite light, right? I look at that through these periods of trauma, which is, what we're going through as a world, as a country, as an economy. Now is, and it could be argued both ways. Is my point of view. Like, now is actually a really great time to try to do something outside of the box, try to be creative, try to take a little bit of risk, right? It's not, again, you're not going to start it on Monday and Tuesday. It's the business is established and successful, but I think it's a good time to go through those blood, sweat, and tears, initial weeks, months, and years while we're going through this trauma, because once we get to the other side, and we will get to the other side, you're going to be in a great position. as opposed to starting then.
Yeah,
right.
totally.
I would rather go through it now.
Yeah.
And there's a tremendous, the other big aspect. We talk about, with career and all these things. We talk about doing the right thing. We talk about fulfillment, right? And the fulfillment that you can have when you're working in the financial services industry is just amazing. And that's one of the biggest things that I've really enjoyed over the last, over this year, this very crazy, tumultuous year, is that you can really have such an impact on people's lives, on someone's business life that needs help. And you're able to guide them down the right path and point them in the right direction and really do something that's going to have a huge impact on their life, their family, their business. And, that's just incredible, right? It really is.
And I understand what you mean. And when you look at it like that, I mean, some of the other products you've sold in the past, great. They have connectivity in their office. Like, that's just, the fulfillment there isn't nearly as much as you've literally worked with these people for the last X number of years to position them so they could retire and move on to their dream of owning a yacht or a house or whatever in Florida or a place down in the Caribbean, whatever it is. Like, to help somebody build that, plan that, and actually see that out is, I mean, that's incredible. That's cool.
It is huge. And the other aspect of it too is when you work in sales, typically the way it's structured is, you work for a company. That company has a product or a product line, and that's all you have access to sell, right? There is nothing, that's all I got is behind door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. When you're working in more of this entrepreneurial capacity, you're not tied to any specific product, or you're not tied to any specific item, right? You can work with the client and you can go to market to see, well, what is best for them in this situation. And there's a million different products, and there's a million different companies that sell those products, and you can work with the client to see, well, what makes the most sense. So it allows you to have more liberty, I guess you could say, to make the right recommendations.
Yeah, and come up with a solution that's actually going after their needs and not just shoving that round peg into the square hole.
Yep, 100%.
How do you feel having sold different things and been in different, having sold different things and having to have a different approach for these things and selling products versus services versus finance versus connectivity, whatever. Do you find that the sales approach is a blanket, like, what is your problem? Let me find a solution. Or do you find that each one of these things has a very unique approach to it? Someone out there that's a sales professional, they want to learn something. Like, how do you approach each thing, and how do you kind of determine how you're going to approach the sale with a different customer? What is your thought on that, having seen different things now?
So I think it's less, in my opinion, right? I think it's less about the product, the service, the industry that you're in, and it's more about the person you're working with, right? Because we've all sat down with business meetings with people that they don't let you talk, and they're like, all right, you got 5 minutes, let's go, and you're like, there's no way we can possibly accomplish anything in 5 minutes, and they're forcing you to speak super fast and interrupting you, and then you have other people that maybe after 2 hours you can't get out of there. And so everybody's different, and I think that it's not so much about like what it is that you're actually what it is that you represent to try to help them with, but more about trying to figure out like, well, how do they work, and how can I be a best service to them? How can I deliver value to them, and based on their personality? And I think the biggest way that I try to work with people is to try to take more of an emotional angle, right? Because at the end of the day, we could always just talk about whatever it is, whether it's connectivity, whether it's financial services. You can really get into the monotony of well, here's the solutions and here's how they work and this and that. But what I prefer to do with my clients is to try to see like, well, what is it that makes you happy? What is it that keeps you up at night, right? And when we can figure that out, and when we can get to know each other really well, then we can get to the real stuff. And then once I get to the real stuff, we can work together towards a solution that makes sense. So it's trying to take that emotional angle. And I find that one of the best ways to do that, right? There's certain people that they have no problem opening up their heart to you right on day one. It's rare though. And there's plenty of people out there that they're not okay with that.
They'll never open up, no matter what.
They'll never open up. And then I think most people probably are somewhere in between there. And, you know, what I try to do is I try to be open myself, and I try to say, you know, look, you know, I'm not perfect. You know, let me make myself vulnerable to you. You know, I've made mistakes. I've done this. I've done that. And you know, here's how I overcame it. And I find that if you're able to humble yourself and make yourself a little vulnerable to someone, and then show them how you actually overcame that, there's this like almost, primate like thing that we have in our brains that makes you want to connect with that person. You feel connected with them, and you're more now open to having a real conversation with them. Mm-hmm. And once you can break that wall down, then you can achieve great things, regardless of what you're doing. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? So you talk about connectivity, you talk about, you know, working in the corporate IT and tech world. You really wouldn't think there's a lot of emotion going on in those conversations, right? Here's the product, here's how it's good, here's why what you have today stinks and why this is awesome. You know, I had an IT guy that, you know, I was working with, and I was trying to help him with, you know, with a solution. And, you know, the guy seemed like a wreck in the meeting. And I almost wanted to, like, some point to stop and be like, are you okay? Like, I don't know what's going on in your personal life. I mean, who knows? Everybody's got things in their personal. I'm like, do you want to reschedule? Like, you know, like, and I was trying to be sensitive. I didn't want to embarrass him by any means. And, you know, he opened up to me and said that, you know, like, look, you know, there was a really bad outage a few weeks ago. I'm somewhat new at this company. My boss came down on me for this outage, and he's like, I'm scared, man. He's like, I need to get a solution in here that's going to make sure that my company doesn't experience that again, because I'm afraid, what if I lose my job? I just had a baby, I had this, I had that. And I'm like, whoa. So now all of a sudden I'm talking to this guy about, you know, how it's going to be okay, and we're going to figure it out. And you know, like, but we're talking about selling wire, you know, connectivity. But, you know, there's always an emotional part to everything. There's a lot tied
to that decision.
Yeah.
There's a lot tied to that decision. You know, and sometimes you don't think of it that way. And I've been in those positions, and I understand exactly what you're saying. And sometimes you just don't realize that. And that goes for two things, right? You don't realize the impact that you're going to have by pushing someone in a direction to make a decision. And that's why really, as salespeople, right, or in any profession selling any type of service or product, you have a responsibility of being transparent. You have a responsibility of providing the right solution. And sometimes what that takes, and people don't realize the long-term effects, they only worry about the immediate effects, but sometimes what that takes is saying, listen, I might not be a good fit for you. Yeah. And I think that as a salesperson, that's the scariest thing and like the toughest thing to ever say, because you're always taught so much of go for the sale, go for the close, go for it, doesn't matter, shove the round peg into the square hole. And I think that people shy away from doing that, but in the long run, all right, like what we talked about earlier, providing those right solutions, being a valued resource, doing the right thing is much more sustainable. So you have to realize the impact that it has on people. You have to realize that if you sell this guy the wrong product, it very well could cost him his job. It could, you know, if you cost him his job, it could make him lose his house, his kid. Like, there's so many things that come with that. Just do the right thing. It'll make you feel better. And ultimately, at the end, you'll be more successful. So you have to realize that impact on even selling wire, what all those things impact. So that's a good lesson, man.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what am I doing to put good stuff out there into the world, as opposed to putting bad stuff in there, and acting in your own, you know, purely in your own self-interest. I think most people would agree that's probably putting bad vibes out there in the world. And, you know, putting other people before yourself, I think most people would say that's putting good stuff out there. And, you know, to just try to make it simple, when you're putting more good stuff out there, it's just better for everybody, including yourself, right? And so, you know, you gotta kind of help others to help yourself, kind of deal. And you know, that's the way with everything, man. I mean, you could talk about marriage, you could talk about being a parent, you could talk about running a business, being a sales professional. I think that common theme carries through to a lot of things.
Totally. Listen, we could talk for hours.
We probably can.
We definitely can. We've done it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you with this. I want to know. We talked about all the success. We talked about moving from one company to another, taking another leap of faith, it working out for you. And it's tremendous, and I know it works out for you because of the person you are, because of your work ethic. Like, I could vouch for all that. What I want to know right now is think hard. and tell me, what was one of the toughest moments you ever had in your career? What were one of the big hurdles that you had to get over? A lot of people always talk about the success, talk about this. I feel like the most valuable lessons are when you fail. Like, I've had partners that stole massive amount of money from me, and businesses that didn't make it. And like, I've learned so much from my failures, and there's always successes in between. The successes are great, but let's talk about a hurdle that you had to get over. Maybe a mistake you made, or maybe something that a colleague did, let's talk about a hurdle for a second. What do you think? What comes to mind when I say what was one of the biggest challenges you ever had to overcome in your career?
So I think in my career, the most difficult time period that I just struggled with was honestly when I did my first career change, where I went from working in small business advertising sales to working in corporate IT and telecom sales. So it was a move from your clients were small businesses to your clients are big businesses. And because of I had never worked in that space, and because I was still young at the time, and I just didn't, I was still figuring out how business works and everything. In this world, you can kind of get up and running somewhat quickly. And in this world, as well as the world I'm in today, you don't really get up and running quickly. It can happen, but 99% of the time, it's going to take time. And so I naively kind of went into this world thinking that I was going to get things going a lot faster than expected. And, months are going by, and it turned out to almost be a full year where I was, every day working my butt off, doing a lot of grinding kind of work that, it's not, at the end of the day, you're not like, I can't wait to go back tomorrow and do that again. Like, it was very tough, tough work. And I never had that experience before of having to really work hard and know that my hard work today is going to pay off in the years to come, because everything I had done before kind of was accelerated. And so people would tell me, you're doing the right thing, keep doing it, it's going to pay off, things are going to get better. And, then you have the financial stress that's coming down on you. I had the decision where I was at this company and I was doing well, and people were said, don't leave, it might be a mistake. And I come here, and now months and almost a year has gone by, and I'm sucking wind basically. And so, I'm in did I make a mistake? Did I make a mistake? And then it all worked out. And I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. One of the ways that you and I met was because some of the work that I did in that first year where I was out there networking, talking to people all the time. I met this guy who introduced me to that guy who introduced me to you, and then boom, and that's happened a million times over, and relationships get formed. And then, then it took off, right? It's kind of like, compound interest where, it starts off slow and then, it accelerates towards the end. But going through that period, when I was in my late 20s and never having experienced that before, and having a lot of doubt, like, shoot, is this going to work? Is it going to take off? I didn't know. And I think that, for me, that has equipped me really well to do this latest big change, because I've gone through it, I've seen it happen, and I see I get how it works now. So I came into this scenario prepared better, right? It's still tough, right? It's still very tough. But at least you kind of know, hey, it works, and you don't have to be constantly doubting yourself. So that was the most challenging thing, is just mentally to keep putting one foot in front of the other when you're worried that you made a mistake and that you're worried that it's not going to work out, and to keep doing that for months, and not stopping.
I mean, I could tell you I've been in that exact same position, right? And I think that I would almost venture to say that everyone at some point has a situation like that, because nobody was born and they're successful. I mean, it just doesn't happen, right? And sometimes you feel like you're starting something up, whether it's a startup or a new job or a new career or new business, whatever it is, you don't see that immediate success. So what happens is people are turning their wheels, and you're looking back and you're like, man, it's been 6 months, man, it's been a year, man, it's been 3 years, like however long it's been, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, and you're turning wheels, and you feel like, at high level, you've accomplished nothing, right? But when you look back and you realize the people you're meeting, the things you're learning, where you are now compared to where you were when you started, I think it's hard you get lost in the mix because people measure success like, you know, based on, oh, how much money did I make, or what car am I driving, or what house do I have, or, you know, there's so many materialistic ways of judging it that people lose how much they're actually gaining through all those things. And sometimes it takes a look back 10 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now to really understand all the things that you have gained. And just, you know, people need to realize all those small wins. People need to realize that grind. People need to realize that you are making massive strides, whether you feel it in the bank or not. You're doing the right thing. As long as you're grinding, as long as you're doing the right thing, and as long as you're working your ass off, eventually that break will come. You know what I mean? You just got to get out there and meet as many people as you can. So love it. That's a good challenge to learn from. So
yeah, Robbie, thank you so much for having me on the show. This is an awesome experience.
Cool, man. Thank you for being here. Love having you. You're welcome back anytime you want. We could definitely talk for hours. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you?
So two best ways to get in touch with me are my cell phone as well as my email address. So we'll certainly put that, I would imagine, in the caption of this video.
You got it. You'll see it right in your profile.
Beautiful.
All right. So visit culcainteractive.com. Check Matt out. Check out his profile. Check out his bio. Get in touch with him. Great guy to network with, whether you're looking for financial services or not. The dude is a great guy. I love him. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.